Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Founders Grid, sponsored by Caper.io. Today we have Yotam. Yotam is the VP of Engineering at Electric. Yotam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, before joining Electric.ai, what you've been doing, what you've been up to, would like to hear that.
Sure. I think my last two positions sort of prepared me for Electric. I was an executive engineering leader at StructureWeb as VP engineering there. It was a fairly small team, but I sort of had to do everything kind of full-blown startup mode. Anything from sales support and business planning to the day-to-day management of the engineering team and the technology itself. I think having done that at a small scale, a fairly small team, sort of 15 and under, I then moved to Work Market where I was not the executive leader. I was doing director level work, but for a much larger team, having sort of 20 plus reports, but the team as a whole being a team of 100. So it gave me good opportunity to learn how operation, budget, tech planning, scaling, how the whole thing works when the team is much more mature and more has more resources. And so if you combine those two, which made up for about 8 years, that kind of brings me to this VP of engineering position for Electric, where in a sense it brings it all together. It's both a mission of scaling a team and a platform, and also a chance to execute operationally, building strong operations that supports a team as it's growing and as the needs for alignment become more significant.
Interesting. And how's been the experience at Electric so far?
Oh, it's been a blast. It's been absolutely phenomenal year for Electric, for me in person, just in terms of how much fun I'm having and how much growth we were able to execute over a relatively short period of time. Yeah, as I said, the team doubled in less than a year.
Wow.
Our ability to go after an aggressive roadmap is quite strong at the moment. And I think also Electric is well suited for sort of an emergency economy, or the situation like this being what we provide is in essence remote IT support is a strong core for our business. So we were able to continue to grow and continue to provide service that people really need right now, maybe even more than before.
Got it. So, managing remote teams, that has been the challenge for many of the teams and many of even the large companies, So what practices have you taken up at Electric to address those issues? And going forward, would you want to keep the same structure, or would you like changing it?
Yeah, so we're lucky in a sense we've already had a remote team. We are split between the US and Argentina. And so we had some of the basic setup that you need, both on tooling and our culture, to handle remote work well. Most of our teams have people in both countries, so they had their ceremonies already used to a remote system, and one that requires a little more async communication at times. So we were well set for that in engineering. In a sense, I feel like it's helped. It leveled the playing field as far as communication goes, which I think is one of the top challenges, because instead of having 3 or 4 people in a meeting room and then 3 or 4 that are remote in Zoom in various locations in a different country, we now had everyone on the Zoom. I'm sure a lot of companies find that that's the case. When everyone is on Zoom, situation tends to be better than if 80% of the people in the room and 20% are kind of struggling to feel part of what's going on. So in a sense, I think that got even better. I think the adjustments we've made are really on the focus on communication, both the verbal communication and more proactive support for participation. And also as far as knowledge, it's better knowledge sharing, better knowledge base. We've invested quite a bit on our written knowledge. For us, it's using Confluence. I'm sure other companies use different solutions, but much more mindful as to how we communicate, whether it's doing project planning or road mapping or architecture or whatever else, just had to do that a lot more in writing and make sure to over communicate then verbally through meetings and one-on-ones and whatever else, so we can feel like we are just as much in sync and as easily communicating as we did when we were at the office.
Got it. Got it. So, you know, interesting times because of COVID, right? And the mental health of the teams is becoming a bigger and bigger topic right now, because especially in cities like New York, San Francisco, London, where cities are congested and the spaces are limited and everyone has been forced to stay in the apartments, right? So it's the mental health is becoming a big challenge, right? So how are you addressing that at Electric, being a team leader, and what practices are you putting in place to cope up with it?
Yeah, so I think it starts with the company as a whole, really at the executive level. We really aligned and we're very proactive thinking about how to support our employees. And so from day one, our HR went really aggressive to talk to each person, make sure they have what they need, support them as they build their own home office, see what they need as far as support from us, just to make sure their environment is one that's optimal. I think it started with that for us as an engineering team. It was a little bit easier because we were used to it, had a little bit more readiness as far as culture and operation. For other teams that were fully in the office every day, no one's remote, they need a little bit more help to set stuff up. And we just made sure to share the knowledge, just be really intentful and proactive and not reactive as far as prepping for that. As far as what you're talking about, mental health,
Yeah.
I think it comes from the same place as just give it attention. Ask what's difficult. See how the lines become blurry between home and work, between our time spent doing our job and then our time with our families, and just see what is the situation that evolves and then support that, discuss that, and make sure you give that both time and resources. So to be more specific, we can tell that people work around the clock. That's at least our experience, even more devoted and more hardworking than before. And we have to counter that with some kind of pipelines for people to rest. And so it started by changing our vacation policy to be unlimited, so people don't feel like they have to save days for when hopefully the situation is resolved. And instead they could just take time off now and rest, and know that if later on they're able to go on a longer vacation or travel, they can do that. A second thing was sending the information about employee vacation to the managers as relevant for them, so they can have the visibility and continue to drive. Not just HR, but all managers can go to their people and say, hey, I see you've only taken 2 days in the last 7 months. Why don't you take a week, and I'll help you figure out how to fit everything in so it doesn't add stress to your plate. We also made sure, within the executive team, to show that we are taking time off. It's good to take time off. It's encouraged. You could do that for a day or two. You could do that for a few hours when you need it. You can actually say, hey, I need a few hours. I'm, whatever it is, in need of rest or a break. And then on top of that, we also added two things I think really help. One is a weekly no meeting half day for the entire company. And it's important that it's not just for one team, and everyone knows that these are the 4 hours where there's no meetings. Nobody schedules them. They're not missing anything by having a no meeting time. That really helps to have on a weekly basis. And the other things are, even on top of the unlimited vacation and all the support, we also added a monthly day off until the end of the year, so that once a month, the entire company is off. It's once again not a choice. You don't have to worry that you're missing things because other people are making progress, or they're on Slack, or they're emailing you. It's just everyone gets an extra day off. Yeah, I don't know if that's one single thing that really helps. It's just the mixture of all those different techniques. And maybe more than anything else, it's just the mindset. Just remember, this is really challenging. It's a huge adjustment. It's very hard to maintain a good sort of mental health balance in this situation. So just have it as a topic, talk about it, see what ideas come up, try them. lead by example on that if you're in a senior leadership team.
That once that's really an interesting thought for that. I'll definitely talk to my other VPs about this. So, last question, Yotam, primarily around an advice to young entrepreneurs or young startups who've just started out, and so the product market fit, building a lovable product is the challenge, is the dilemma that everyone goes through, right? So any 3 to 4 pieces of advice in regarding building a lovable product or finding the product market fit, any thoughts on that you can share with them?
Yeah, sure. And it reminds me of some of the conversations I've been having with a young startup called Ostrich, to which I am an advisor. I think it starts with the fact that nothing that you do, maybe for any company, but definitely for early stage startup, nothing that you do is in vacuum. You're not just trying to find a great product, you're trying to find it right now for the next 6 months. You're trying to find it until you're able to get your next round of funding, right? Or you're trying to find it to a goal of knowing maybe how much people would pay for a certain service, or maybe how many users you could get over a period of time. There's always something that defines your search in your go-to-market strategy or in your product roadmap, as opposed to just thinking about it globally. If I had all the time and resources in the world, which nobody has ever have, what product would I develop? So think about those constraints, make them clear to yourself as a company, and answer those questions from that standpoint. I have my seed money, it's good for 8 months. I can get my Series A if by this time of year I have this kind of product with this amount of users and some knowledge on how I fit in the market and how much revenue I can generate. That's just an example. Define that, then work backwards, and that's your plan for the next 8 months. And once you got your Series A funding, now you have a new journey. The clock is ticking to your Series B, and now it's a new set of goals. What do you need to get there? What kind of product would get you to the next step? So don't operate in vacuum is one. 2 is maybe a little bit obvious, but still it's maybe the most fundamental, is you got to stay agile, and agile means iterative. And so you got to be super aggressive with your MVP, whatever your minimum viable product is, based on the non-vacuum assumptions that we just talked about. Define that, but see what piece of it you get out there in weeks, not months, and then get feedback there and adjust, and just continue to do that loop of building, measuring, and learning all the time. Yeah, all the materials out there. We all know how to work agile. We all understand lean development. It's nothing new. But I find it remains the best mindset if you're building a product, is to think like that. And don't stay out there in the dark for too long. Get something in front of some users and get feedback. Yeah, last thing, it's never too early to define your operation. Operation is not a word for a 300 people company. You can have a great definition of a lean operation if your company is 5 people. You really can. And the reason why I want to do this is, at any given point in time, there's some kind of best practice that you can follow, that your small team can figure out what works best for them. If you actively search for that best practice and then everyone works the same way, then you're constantly operating at the best possible level that you know of. And if you keep even that part agile, meaning every few weeks or whatever your cadence, you talk about that process or tooling or set of behaviors you're following, get feedback on that from the team and adjust this as you go. You're promising yourself that at any given point in your journey, you're constantly operating to the best level that you could possibly think of. You're being intentful about it. You're spending a little bit of time thinking what would work best, trying it out. And if it works great, you're good. And if not, making adjustments. So I think, yeah, sometimes it's hard to spend time when you're a young startup. You want to go really, really fast. You don't necessarily want to define what your process is or how you're going to measure your success. But it doesn't take that much time. You can do that sort of super thin and still get a ton of value, just knowing I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of resources. So I'm constantly operating in the most efficient way I know.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. Yotam, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for everything. Take care of yourself and stay safe.
Pleasure. Take care. Thanks for having me, and stay safe, everyone.